Welcome to another edition of A Voice to the Gentile Church. I'm Jim Wingerter. Next to me is Pastor Roger Diaz. So we're in the midst of a hostage situation in Israel, and ongoing now since the murderous onslaught of Hamas against the state of Israel.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. You know, it's a wonderful thing, first of all, to see all these people being released. You know, of course, there could be more ideal settings for the release of the hostages. Israel having to release prisoners, I think 10 Hamas prisoners to every one Israeli captive. So think about that.
Yeah, what's right about that?
Yeah, so they're forced to release criminals as Hamas.
That speaks that Palestinian prisoners are more important than Israeli citizens.
It speaks of the incredible imbalance of all of this.
Right.
And the world forces, the global geopolitical situation that will force Israel into something like this, that they will give up 10 criminals for one innocent citizen.
Right.
That's, you know, when you look at it from that point of view, that's horrible.
Well,
and these Hamas criminals that are being released are the worst of the worst.
Right.
So
they're going to regroup and be involved again in planning terrorist attacks.
I saw one clip of a woman that was released, a criminal, one of the masterminds of one of the attacks years ago, and she came out of prison immediately, harping all of the hate and the murderous intentions of Hamas. So it's an amazing thing. Now, I would have preferred to not see criminals being released back into the reservoir of hate against Israel. I would have much preferred not to see that, but at least people are being released, you know. And so you don't want to see this, but what's the other alternative for Israel? You know, I think I know what that would be, but I don't want to talk about that at this time. But Israel has the opportunity now to jostle and to bargain with their enemies to have these people released, and it's not the most favorable conditions. Yeah. And what's really troubling is that world government, you know, the UN, the EU, the United States, we're prepared to continue to put pressure on Israel to continue this bargaining with terrorists. You know, it used to be that you don't make deals with terrorists.
Right. Israel used to put their fist down and say, we don't negotiate with terrorists.
So
we don't hear that anymore.
This is negotiation, but at the same time, again, from Israel's point of view, this is the only way by which they can have their citizens released. Yeah.
Well, and if you have, but the reality is there's still 160 or more that are not released, and they're not looking at releasing them, and I'm not sure what goes on the table in order for them to be released.
What's really hideous is that the Hamas and the people of Hamas, who are the Palestinians, are rejoicing over the release of these criminals, and they're claiming victory. You know, in other words, they're taking the position that this was their plan to begin with, and they're succeeding. Mm-hmm. So that's not what you want to see your sworn enemy doing.
Right.
You know, we have to remember that the Hamas did horrible things to people. The atrocities that were committed against women and children. And a lot of people are not wanting to talk about what they've done to some of the women, the way that they treated the women. And I understand that, but I think it would be beneficial if the world would know some of the things that were done to the women, and just to make a comparison with Hamas to Israel, because there seems to be this drive to equate Israel with Hamas. Right, Israel's proportionality. Israel's response is improportionate with what Hamas did. But the truth is, Israel isn't ravaging people's lives.
Right.
You know, Hamas or the Palestinians are putting innocent lives before themselves to shield themselves, and some of them are dying. But what Hamas did is butchery, barbarism.
Right. Barbarism.
And, you know, there's a terrible, terrible lack of sense, lack of pragmatism on the part of the nations in putting Israel in this place where they have to make these deals. Israel should be free to do as she sees fit to secure her borders, to ensure that Hamas never, ever has an opportunity to do this again. Israel has that right. So we have a president now. Well, actually, you know, we say a president, but he's just a figurehead. He's not even a figurehead. Actually, he's a puppet. Many people say puppet. I like that. I've been calling him a puppet for a long time.
Right.
He's a puppet of a group of puppeteers who are the ones that are really calling the shots, right? So where the United States of America, our military is there in the Mediterranean right now, and given the impression that we're there to protect Israel. And we're not. We're not there to protect Israel. We're there to make a statement to Israel that we will protect you if you go along with us.
Right.
That's not protection.
Right.
But what would be a good term for that? If I'm doing something only to get a reaction from you, what is that in reality?
It's strong arming.
Strong arming, squeezing. So the squeeze is placed upon Israel, and that's not, you don't strong arm someone, you don't give them such ultimatums and say that you're helping them.
Right.
Because you're not.
Well, Joe's seizing the opportunity. He's coming up on an election year, and he's going to say, "I got all these hostages freed."
Well, of course, the media is already saying
they're jumping on that.
He's already saying that he prevented World War III, and you know, had Trump been there, we would have already been in World War III, and they're already propping him up as this great, you know, statesman who negotiated and brought things to where they are now. And of course, most people, perhaps unfortunately, will believe that. But if you know anything about the reality of what's happening in Israel, if you have any background in any solid way, if you have a good solid foundation of an understanding of what's going on there, you know that that's just complete nonsense. You know, he's not succeeding to do anything except put the squeeze on Israel.
Well, and Bibi understands that the Palestinians only understand the resounding defeat of Allah.
So what we're seeing right now is encouraging on the part of Israel, even though Israel is still in a mode of capitulation, and I think Israel feels like they have to be in that place. So, you know, we sing a song, you know, Israel, Betach Hashem, which is trust God.
Right.
And so that, of course, can be grounded in the scripture, comes from the prophets, even in the Psalms, we see those statements. So the question is, should Israel begin to truly trust God and separate itself from the nations, this nation, and really, really hone in on the reality of trusting God? Is that the time that we're in right now? And I think yes. I think we're in that time right now where Israel is in a position to say to the United States, the EU, we don't need your help anymore. We're going to stand on our own with God, and you can thank you, but no thank you. I think Israel is in that place now. But that's an in-house argument in Israel.
Right, sure.
And but incredible things are happening in Israel right now in terms of faith. You have prayer in the Knesset, which is not something that has happened before. They're having semi-regular prayer meetings in the Knesset. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's good from that point of view. I think faith has become more of a consideration in Israel in a very broad way.
Right.
Faith has become something that's now being put before the people of Israel. You know, this attack on October 7th was so powerful and so awesome that the people of Israel now are in a place where some of the divisions that existed a week before,
Right.
2 weeks before,
Right.
are almost non-existent. And now their focus is, we've got to overcome this. We have an enemy
Right.
in our midst. We have a fifth column, but also the nations of the world are hating us. They're seeing the rallies, they're seeing the vehement hatred that's coming from even the United States of America or universities. So the concept of circling the wagons is what Israel is beginning to experience
Right.
now. And yes, they need to circle the wagons, but they need to circle their wagons around God,
Yeah.
around the promises of God.
They are considerably more unified than they were.
And that's a wonderful
In a
thing.
heartbeat, that
Yeah,
happened.
that's a wonderful thing. There are all sorts of conspiracies. I spoke to someone this week, and the idea that Israel, the Mossad, was behind this attack
Oh, that's
to
ridiculous.
attain to certain goals and so on. And those conspiracies are out there, and I totally reject them.
Yeah.
Now, is it possible that there was some sort of inside maneuvering before and after? I have no idea. I guess anything is possible when dealing with Israeli politics. But the truth is, the people of Israel are united, and they're coalesced, and they've become more focused on the reality of faith, knowing that this is the time of the Geulah, the great redemption, the Gadol Geulah. And it's a wonderful thing. We're seeing courage, we're seeing boldness, we're seeing people that are becoming more determined to be the people that they're supposed to be, and this is good. So horrible as October 7th is, because it's going to be ongoing for a while, we're seeing positive things. And we're also seeing miracles. We're hearing of things happening on the battlefield that can only be categorized as bona fide miracles.
Right.
And more we will hear about these things. Israel's campaign against Hamas has just begun.
Yeah.
Once the ceasefire is commenced, it comes to an end, I should say, then they're going to begin to focus on other cities, and gradually they'll move from north to south, and hopefully by the middle of next year, perhaps end of spring maybe, they would bring an end to Hamas's reign in Israel. The biggest wild card right now is Hezbollah in the north.
Sure.
So, we have to continue to pray for Israel. We have to continue to encourage them. If we have interaction with them, we have to continue to encourage them and pray for them. I'm hearing wonderful testimonials about Israelis being strengthened by people like us, Christians, who would pray and intervene spiritually for them.
Right.
So we just have to keep doing what we're doing.
We said years ago when when Israel disengaged from Gaza, they called it the Gaza disengagement, that we said
Yeah.
You're going to have the enemy right
Yeah.
in your own backyard, and they do.
So that was with Sharon in 2007, right?
Yeah.
Gush Katif. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a mystery that this would ultimately happen. I remember when we went to Israel this year, back in March, our tour guide and even the tour company itself was really excited about us going down and visiting Sderot and Beersheba, the communities down there, and we
Yes.
went down. In fact, the kibbutz that we stayed at is right next to the kibbutz that was destroyed. I mean, just within about 5 miles,
Okay.
we were right there. And so, yeah, Israel up until October 7th, really, they were comfortable about the South. They were comfortable about Sderot. And like I said, they wanted us to go down and visit this wonderful community. So they were hoping that the Gaza disengagement thing was succeeding. And part of the reality that they've been caught so unawares is that they were beginning to accept that it had succeeded, because Hamas was conducting itself as if they were content, but they were not content, of course.
Right.
So now here is the proof positive for Israel that they will not have peace with Hamas. You see, Hamas wanted shock and awe, and they attained to shock and awe. But they've miscalculated the Jewish soul. 2,000 years or maybe 2,500 years of hardship at the hands of the nations has made Israel into a unique people, a people that are resilient and will not back down when put in a corner. So what I'm seeing right now in Israel, what I'm witnessing is a resilience, a determination, a commitment to survive. And so Hamas thought that they were going to shock Israel and probably push them back. But what they've actually done is they've caused Israel to surge forward in terms of zeal, determination, and aggression. And they're going to witness that aggression themselves. So Hamas by now is fully aware that they've made a horrible mistake in their application, because they've sown the wind and they'll reap the whirlwind. Because I'm so excited about Bibi and the things that he's saying. Not just he's representing a committee of Israeli thought, but there is a sense of a real commitment to put an end to Hamas. And I pray that happens.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, Hamas is taking a beating and they need to be crushed completely. You know, I saw a commentator, a news commentator, liberal, of course, basically made the statement that, we have to distinguish or differentiate between Hamas and the innocent Palestinians. Yeah, that idea is so prevalent, right? Well, it's as if we've forgotten that Hamas was elected by the Palestinians, and that the Palestinians...
In Gaza, they made them their ruling body.
And that 90% of the Gazans are celebrating the release of these prisoners based on the slaughter of innocent Jewish life.
Right.
So how can you say that the so-called Palestinians, the Gazans, are innocent in this?
Right.
When they are championing the cause of Hamas. It used to be that an entire nation stood to be obliterated for those actions.
Right.
But of course, we understand what's happening in Gaza. I'm not favoring the obliteration of an entire nation, 2-point-something million people. I'm not in favor of that. But based on their actions and based on their reaction, they should be completely repatriated.
Yeah.
And I say repatriated because they're not patriots.
Right.
They need to be repatriated to wherever they come from. Most of the Gazans are Egyptians.
Right.
And they need to go back.
And those that remain are mostly Jordanian.
And on the West Bank, mostly Jordanians.
Right.
With a sprinkling of Arabs that's been there for a long time.
Yes.
But, the Arabs that are indigenous to the land of Israel, at least for the past 1,500 years, 2,000 years even, they're different from the Jordanian Palestinians, from the Egyptian Palestinians. They're entirely different.
Right.
And rarely would stand with them. But when put in a corner, they would. So,
yeah,
I guess our discussion here is really giving background on the situation with the Palestinians in Israel and giving some history on it, which is good. But we have to understand that the people that we refer to as Palestinians, of course, are not truly Philistines. We've talked about that before.
Right.
They're not indigenous to the land of Israel. They're not a people who were there for millennia. In the West Bank, Ramallah, Jenin, and Nablus, those are the three main cities. At least 85%, 90%, 95% of those people are, like you said, Jordanians.
Yeah.
And why are they there? Well, the king of Jordan, Hussein, I think it was, when Jordan had possession of the West Bank of the Jordan, right?
Right.
And realized that Israel was encroaching upon the land and the regions, and worse, they were looking for settlements in Judea, Samaria. They forced their worst elements into the West Bank. And the purpose for them creating that refugee situation, forcing their worst criminal elements into the West Bank, their purpose was, of course, to be an impediment to Israel. And so now the impediment is vivid, it's clear. So right now in Israel, there is a great fear that between Jenin, that triangle of hate,
Yes.
between Jenin, Ramallah, and Nablus, there's going to be something like what happened at Sderot in the south.
Mm-hmm.
That there's going to be this wave of rage, as they referred to it, coming over into the communities in Samaria, such as, Ariel, Kedumim, Kone Shamron, and all of those communities are in jeopardy right now. You see, and we know how the world feels about the settlements, the illegal settlements, right? So that's in, you have 3 sections in the occupied territory, A, B, and C.
Right.
C is where the illegal settlements are located.
Okay.
Area C. Area A are communities or areas that should be used as that's to be used as communication. Like streets. If you have like the town Jit, that's close to Kedumim.
Mm-hmm.
That's Area B. Why? Because the people of Area C has to use that to travel through and to go back and forth. So that's Area C. Area A is such as Ramallah, Jenin, Nablus, where it is rigidly hate
Right.
Palestinians. Right. And Jews of any area are not allowed into Area A. If you even venture there, we've seen it, right?
Yeah.
We've seen that big posted sign going into Nablus, Area A, where they tell you if you enter into here, you enter at the risk of your own losing your life at your own risk.
Right.
So it's one of those things where the whole idea of the West Bank, it is such a controlled environment, and it's controlled in such a way as to, of course, favor Area A. The illegal settlers are an impediment, and they are the minority in that area. And they, as far as the world is concerned, the illegal settlers are the reason for the entire, problem to begin with. So the solution is do away with the settlers and give everything back to the West Bank, back to Jordan.
So we know the land was taken by Israel in the 67 Six-Day War,
Mm-hmm.
and that we would say Israel should have annexed the West Bank immediately. That's what we did in the United States when states were made states as the nation grew to the west. And since it wasn't annexed, we're left with this indecisiveness about the territories. Yeah. And the attitude that land doesn't belong to Israel. Israel took that land in the 67 war from Jordan, and it is the biblical heartland. All of the events that take place that we read about in the Bible, cover to cover, 90% or more of them take place in that area.
Judea, Samaria, Jerusalem.
Right.
Of course, not to forget, of course, the importance of the Galilee. So, yeah, absolutely, you're right. But there's this incredible consolidation of pressure from the nations. It's been there since the Balfour Declaration. During the Ottoman Empire, before World War I, that pressure was there, but it wasn't what it became following the Balfour Declaration. So where's that pressure coming from? It's coming from the same entity that basically introduced World War I and II. It's the globalists who are putting that pressure on Israel, because I'm convinced there is a fear among the nations that Israel would become a free nation. And you see, the globalists are not unaware of the biblical prophecies concerning Israel.
Right.
They're very much aware of it, and they're horrified that these prophecies can actually be fulfilled. So impeding Israel is a priority. And they would go to any extent to continue to impede Israel.
Right.
Because of that basic fear. Their fear was heightened greatly after the War of Independence. You made mention of the Six-Day War.
Right.
Even the War of Attrition and the War of Yom Kippur, even the Lebanese War, they created such a fear in the nations that Israel they saw Israel stand against strong armies,
right,
world confederations almost, Arab confederations, and prevailed. So they can't dare to let Israel engage their enemy without restraints and constraints,
Right.
because they're afraid that Israel would become that nation.
Right.
And they're horrified. And that's why the United States, that's why we're there right now, to prevent any such thing from happening.
Right.
I mean, we see this so vividly, but the world does not. History will tell this exact story in the very same way that we're seeing it. Because we're seeing it from a biblical point of view. Ultimately, history will be fulfilled based on the reality of the Bible. In other words, during the millennial kingdom, or whenever in the future, millennial kingdom, there would be a revision of history based on the Word of God.
Right.
As its foundation.
Right.
And so what we're talking about here will be seen in light of the Bible. That the reason for all of the hardship upon Israel is that the nations are afraid that Israel will become that nation, the head and not the tail.
Right.
And that's their great concern. I say, good, let them be concerned, because they have every reason to be concerned. What do you think?
I think so.
So Dolores isn't here today
No.
to bring all the news forward, so we don't have anything much else to talk about. Maybe
Right.
we should, before we talk the entire
Well, the good
segment
news
away.
the good news is there's unity in Israel, and Israel standing firm.
Absolutely. There's a lot of good news,
Yeah.
actually. We're seeing some miracles. I heard a couple of them, pretty amazing. There's this thing that's happening now where the hostages and the families of the hostages that are being released are just bold in the face of the enemy, showing resilience, showing reflecting that strong Jewish spirit, that strong Jewish soul. So good things are happening.
Yeah.
All right, so we do have a question that's sort of relevant to what we've been talking about.
It is. It is, because I think a lot of Christians are scratching their head right now going, things aren't unfolding the way I was told they would, and this could be the big war.
Yeah, is it possible that Hal Lindsley was wrong?
Well, just because he's a Jesuit doesn't mean. So here's our question. Could you discuss Armageddon? Is the Battle of Armageddon World War III?
Okay, so the Battle of Armageddon. So that's a very broad subject, but it's amazing that as broad as it is, it's only mentioned once in the Bible.
Right, right.
In terms of the word Armageddon, or the phrase Armageddon, it's only mentioned once in the Bible, but Armageddon is perhaps a word that maybe 80% of all humans on the planet know.
Horribly misunderstood.
Yeah.
They made a movie into, the destruction of the whole earth. That's what most people think Armageddon is talking about.
Yeah, and so several years ago, Bruce Willis and a crew of other premier actors, action guys, made this
Right.
movie. This movie was made about Armageddon, a meteor, I think it was, or was it
Yes.
Meteor was about to crash into the earth. They landed on this meteor and they detonated the meteor. It's just Armageddon, right? So Armageddon is the end of the world as we know it. But that's not what the Bible gives us.
Right.
But we're going to talk about what Armageddon is and what it isn't to some extent. So what is Armageddon? All right, from a biblical point of view, where is Armageddon? Armageddon is a place, right? It's Armageddon. And we've been there a few times. Were we there this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's right. We were there.
Yeah.
We went to the gift store, went up to the top, and so on. So Armageddon is a location in Israel.
Right.
It's on the southwest corner of the Jezreel Valley. Jezreel Valley. The Jezreel Valley, we'll see here in a few minutes, prophetically is mentioned by the prophet Joel as the Valley of Jehoshaphat, also the Valley of Decision. So we'll talk about the Jezreel Valley here in a few moments. So a little history of Armageddon and the Jezreel Valley. In ancient times, considerable wars will be fought in that valley. And why did those wars take place there? I'm talking about the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Hittites, the Egyptians. They all at some point had wars in that valley. The reason that those wars occurred on that location is because the land of Israel historically was a bridge
Right.
connecting three continents.
Right.
Asia, Africa, and Europe. The part of the land of Israel that was used as a bridge is exactly the eastern coast, right? The western coast, of Israel. So that's where the armies will come down and they will march southwards, like the Assyrians would march southwards on that column there, and through Gaza, right where Tel Aviv is, and Haifa, they will march right down and enter into battle with the Egyptians and so on.
Right.
So on the way down is you if you're coming from, let's say you're a Hittite army and you're marching south into Egypt, you're going to come across the Jezreel Valley. It's the first valley that you will encounter, considerable size. So armies used to convene there to engage. You're not going to come into Africa, or you're not going to come into Asia, and let's meet at Jezreel.
Right.
And in many, many cases, the battles will occur there. A couple of battles with Israel, the northern kingdom, and the Syrians and so on, took place there. So the region, the area has a history of embattlement. Solomon had a fortification there at Megiddo, where he kept horses for chariots.
Horse stables, yep.
For chariots. What we don't often talk about is that the northern kingdom of Israel in general, were accomplished charioteers. They were quite accomplished charioteers. In fact, the Assyrians wanted that technology, and when that capacity that Israel had with chariots, they were known for being good charioteers. Exactly why, I can't say. But at any rate, they were good charioteers. And the Valley of Megiddo was the perfect place for maneuvering or for practicing, right? Mm-hmm. It's a fairly large valley. I can't remember the exact size of it.
Well, in that it's connected to the Jezreel Valley, it's all very large.
Yeah. And
it's relatively flat.
Yeah.
And just because it's a valley, it's not dippy. It's pretty flat.
It's sort of the quintessential perfect place for war, because it's surrounded by mountains and you have the sea.
Interesting
to the west.
that you should say that. And there's a new movie out about Napoleon I'd like to see. Mm-hmm. So I read a story when I was in college.
He went down to Megiddo.
He went through there going to Egypt to conquer Egypt.
Yeah.
And he stopped the whole army, put his hands up and said, "This would be an awesome place for a battle."
Yeah.
And one of his generals who knew the Bible said, "Interesting that you would say that."
Yeah. No, it is. He was right, and it is. And that's where the Battle of Armageddon is going to occur. And the word Armageddon comes again from that hill, that mountain on the southwest corner of Jezreel.
Right.
It's called Megiddo. So Har is mountain in Hebrew, Har Megiddo. Now, Har Megiddo is mentioned, of course, like I said, only one time in the Bible. But the same valley is referred to in the book of Joel, the prophet Joel, and we're going to read that here in a few moments. And so maybe we should go over there right now and take a read concerning another aspect of the valley of Jezreel, Har Megiddo. So Joel, the prophet Joel, is an interesting study. 3 chapters, small book. The chapters, they run like a timeline almost. Joel chapter 1 deals with Israel in rebellion against God and God's determination to bring judgment upon Israel. Joel chapter 2 deals with the struggles of Israel in the diaspora, but then it turns to a point where Israel will cry out to God and God will begin to favor Israel in chapter 2. But then chapter 3, God turns his focus to the nations and the rebellion of the nations and his intentions for the nations. So in chapter 3 now, 12 to 14, we're going to see mention there of the valley of Jehoshaphat. Now, what does Jehoshaphat mean? King Jehoshaphat was one of the kings of the southern kingdom, Judah. He was the son of that great king, and his name slips me right now, Asa. King Asa. King Asa was the 4th from King David. So Jehoshaphat is the 5th from King David. Jehoshaphat was a great king. But the valley of Jehoshaphat here has no reference to that king Jehoshaphat. The word Jehoshaphat there, it's not a noun. It is a statement. It means where God will judge. Yehoshaphat,
right,
where the God of Israel. So Jehoshaphat literally means the sovereign God of Israel is judge.
Or will judge.
Or will judge. So let's read Joel chapter 3, 12 to 14.
Let the nations be aroused, and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there I will sit to judge all the surrounding nations.
So that defines Jehoshaphat real clearly, right?
Yes.
Come up here to this valley where I am going to judge. Go ahead.
Put in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, tread, for the winepress is full. The vats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision.
So you have two references there to that valley, the valley of Jehoshaphat, where God will judge, and the valley of decision. So what do you think the significance of that being the valley of decision is? What do you think? Why is it called the valley of decision?
Judgment.
Judgment, right. Decision is going to be passed upon the
Right.
nations, judgment. But very interesting there that you read, I think in verse 13, it talks about the wine press is full, common press. Right?
Yeah.
Where else do we see that? We do see that in a couple other places. But in Revelation chapter 19,
Okay,
right,
yeah.
it's so clear in Revelation chapter 19 concerning the wine press, pressing the grapes of wrath, right?
Right.
And that's Jesus. He is
Yes.
coming, and he's coming to press the grapes of wrath. So we can correlate what you just read in Joel chapter 3, 12 to 14, to Revelation chapter 19. So maybe you can read a little bit for us in Revelation chapter 19, because this is about Armageddon. In
Okay.
other words, the reason we should go study Revelation chapter 19 is because this is occurring in the valley of Jezreel, in the valley of decision. So Revelation 19 is about the valley of decision, but the main point in Revelation chapter 19 is that Jesus is coming to press that wine press. Now, I usually read this because I so love to read it.
Okay.
I'm going to give you the honor.
Oh, okay.
Let's read Revelation chapter 19, 11 to 16. And as we read this, I want us to consider the immense power behind these verses and what is actually stated concerning this judgment that God is bringing to the nations. This is Armageddon. Revelation chapter 19 is very much Armageddon.
And I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse. And he who sat upon it is called Faithful and True. And in righteousness he judges and wages war. And his eyes are a flame of fire, and upon his head are many diadems. And he has a name written upon him which no one knows except himself. And he is clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called Hadavar Adonai, the Word of God. And the armies which are in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, were following him on white horses. And from his mouth comes a sharp sword, so that with it he may smite the nations. And he will rule them with a rod of iron, and he treads the winepress of the fierce wrath of God, the Almighty. And on his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, King of Kings, Lord of Lords.
So you see how that correlates with what we read in Joel chapter 3. So the idea here is he is the one leading this charge. He is the captain of the Lord's host.
Right.
Bringing this battle to the front. So, yeah, he's coming to press that same wine press that Joel saw. And where is it happening? This is happening in the valley of Jezreel, the valley of Megiddo, the valley of decision. So, let's look at where this actually comes from in the Bible, the word Armageddon, the whole idea of Armageddon. And stay in Revelation chapter 16. And would you read, Jim, 12 to 16? Now, 12 to 16 brings the picture of Armageddon to the forefront. But what we will see in 12 to 14 is that there is a nexus, a nexus that's creating the conflict. And they're bringing this conflict to bear. Now, this nexus I normally refer to as the unholy trinity, which is
Right.
the beast, the false prophet, and the dragon
Satan.
himself.
Right.
This is that unholy trinity. And so their purpose is to bring this war into existence. So we need to understand that Armageddon is being driven by this unholy trinity. The truth is, it is God that's bringing them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat.
Right.
And God fully intends to use this conflict, use their hostility against Israel to bring judgment. But they are this unholy trinity are working to bring this into existence.
Mm-hmm.
It's as if God is using their hatred and their animus towards Israel and himself to bring them into judgment. Right? So,
And the sixth angel poured out his bowl upon the great river, the Euphrates, and its water was dried up, that the way might be prepared for kings from the east. And I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits like frogs. And they are spirits of demons, performing signs, which go out to the king of the whole world to gather them together for the war of the great day of God the Almighty. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake and keeps his garments, lest he walk about naked and men see his shame. And they gathered them together to the place which in Hebrew is called Armageddon.
so you see, in regards to what I said earlier, these 3 entities are working conjunctively to bring this conflict into existence. But it's God that's preparing this battle. You see that?
Right,
It's
yes.
stated real clearly there. God's the one that's bringing this into existence. So, interesting that it talks about the Euphrates drying up. And of course, we know that that's the state of the Euphrates
Right now.
today.
Yes.
And so this is, we see this as a real
That could be
clear
quite a sign,
fulfillment.
yeah.
Clear fulfillment of what's coming. So Armageddon, this is where the word Armageddon is found in the Bible, or Armageddon.
Right.
Yes, it is pointing to a global war. Now, let's read also conjunctive scripture with this, a reference in Revelation chapter 9 that correlates with this, with what we just read. This is the pouring out of the 6th bowl of wrath, right?
Yes.
What we're going to read in Revelation chapter 9 correlates with this perfectly, but it points to the sounding of the 6th trumpet. So the 6th trumpet initiates the pouring out of the 6th bowl of wrath. All of the trumpets correlate with the bowls of wrath. So the 6th trumpet is sounded, and the 6th bowl of wrath is poured out, which is Armageddon. So let's go over in 9 and read a little bit from the effects of the sounding of the 6th trumpet, and we'll see how that correlates with what we just read.
And the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar which is before God, one saying to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, Release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. And the 4 angels who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year were released so that they might kill 1/3 of mankind. And the number of the armies of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them.
So, very interesting. Euphrates there is mentioned again. So it's correlating with the effects of the pouring out of the wrath.
Right.
So what we just read presents an incredible possibility that we know that the angels, the fallen angels, are held in captive. They're held captive. They're held in chains, according to what we see in the book of Jude. It seems as if we take this literally, that 4 of those angels are going to be released for a short period of time. And their purpose is to generate their hatred towards Israel. And that's what they're doing. They're coming out from that place. They're being released. Who's releasing them? If they're being kept in chains and they're being released, well, who's releasing them? God is.
God is, yes.
So they're being released, and their purpose is to bring upon Israel their hate, the
Are they genuinely
murderousness.
demons?
That's what it seems.
Messengers
not
of
demons,
Satan.
but fallen angels.
Right.
The demons are the offspring of the fallen angels, the demigods. The disembodied spirits
Right.
of these offspring, the Nephilim. They are the demons. But these 4 angels who are held in captive will be released. And it seems like they waste no time. They begin to work quickly to bring about destruction. A third of humanity dies in their hatred. In this war, in other words, a third of humanity dies as they bring this army of how many people?
200 million.
Yeah. That's a massive army.
That's a big army, but it's not, the population of the planet is about 8 billion.
But this is Armageddon. So Armageddon is actually being carried out by God. God is ultimately initiating every aspect of it because his purpose, again, is to bring the nations into a place of judgment, the valley of decision. He's going to release 4 angels, from what we just read, who will facilitate this with their murderousness, with their rage, with their hatred.
Right.
And that hatred is generated towards Israel. Remember that there was a battle in heaven and Michael and his angels, and so that whole that we see in Revelation chapter 12.
Right.
Michael was the angel to keep watch over Israel. Michael was the angel who destroyed Satan and his angels. And so in Revelation chapter 12, Israel is mentioned very prominently. The woman is Israel.
Right.
So these angels that are being released seem to be coming out with a vengeance after Israel.
Right.
They're going to bring the nations down against Israel. So we have to keep Revelation chapter 9 and 16 in that context. The beast and the false prophet, together with the dragon, will coalesce and form an impetus of hatred and destructiveness. And the beast is, of course, the world governmental system, and the false prophet is the religious governmental system. They are in conjunction with the dragon, who is Satan, preparing this war. Right. So this is Armageddon. Now Armageddon ultimately will be carried out by all the nations, not just the Arab nations, or not just the EU or Russia or China. There's going to be a world confederation, a global agreement concerning this hostility against Israel. And that's what this is pointing to. So the prophet Joel in Joel chapter 3, 1 and 2 makes this really clear that this is a global effort. It's not just the Arab states or one portion of humanity. It's all humanity that will put together this army of 200 million that will march against Israel. But who's inspiring them? The dragon, the beast, the false prophet, being empowered by 4 released angels, perhaps, fallen angels. So in Joel chapter 3, 1 to 2,
for behold, in those days and at that time, when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem, I will gather all the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Then I will enter into judgment with them there on behalf of my people and my inheritance Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and they have divided up my land.
All right. So there you have it. This problem is about Israel. It's a global hostility against Israel, being empowered by spiritual forces, profound spiritual forces. If God does in fact release 4 fallen angels, and these 4 fallen angels have nothing but animus and hatred towards Israel. Mm-hmm. It's a vengeful act. That's an incredibly powerful spiritual impetus that's coming against Israel. But you see it there. It's the nations that will be the embodiment of this hatred. And God said, I will enter into judgment with all the nations in the valley of Jehoshaphat. Now, Israel is the issue, very vividly. Now, Revelation chapter 16 does not portray it clearly, right? It speaks very broadly about this conflict. Almost as if Israel is not the issue, but Israel is the emphasis here of this whole issue. Of course it is. The battle's happening in Megiddo, in Jezreel. So all the nations will form ultimately an effort to bring destruction upon the people of Israel. The source of this is demonic, satanic, but the nations are engaged. The beast and the false prophet are engaged. And so now in Zechariah chapter 12, 1 to 3 also.
The burden of the word of the Lord concerning Israel. Thus declares the Lord who stretches out the heavens, lays the foundation of the earth, and forms the spirit of man within him. Behold, I am going to make Jerusalem a cup that causes reeling to all the peoples around. And when the siege is against Jerusalem, it will also be against Judah. And it will come about in that day that I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the peoples. All who lift it will be severely injured, and all the nations of the earth will be gathered against it.
So ultimately, this presents the reality that ultimately Jerusalem is going to be the centerpiece, the point of contention, right? That's what it's pointing to. It's going to be the epicenter of this great global earthquake. And that's where this is going. But you see, again, all the nations are involved, and Israel is the issue. Israel is the proverbial fly in the ointment that has to be removed. And so this is the essence of Armageddon. All the nations will assemble an army they will put together of 200 million. And this war will be responsible for a third of humanity being destroyed. It's an awful thing.
Yeah.
But the truth is, this is World War III.
Yes.
And that brings us back to the question, is Armageddon World War III? This is World War III. Now, that's a very bold statement, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very bold statement.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, we, the United States of America, we tested a nuclear weapon last week. You know that. Out in Nevada. We tested a nuclear weapon.
Okay.
All right. Why did we do it? To make a statement. Telegraphing. Who are we telegraphing to?
Everybody we don't like.
Russia.
Right.
Mostly Russia. Not China. China and the United States are in alliance on many levels. But Russia. Because Russia is that kid on the block that's not playing ball.
Just won't play with other kids.
He's not playing ball. He's not favoring Western hegemony, New World Order. He's, Russia, Putin.
Right.
He's standing separate and he's determined. So we tested a nuclear weapon just to make a statement.
Okay.
Now, I've said it before in this program, and I'll say it again now. I am just about almost convinced that this global entity, the beast, that's being inspired and driven by the dragon, who is aligned with the religious beast, the false prophet, is likely to use a nuclear exchange as its justification to complete its agenda. Right now, the agenda of this beast is ecological, right?
Right.
It's ecological.
They look like they care about the planet.
Right. And they're using that concern to further their global agenda, right? So that's Agenda 21. Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050. Hideous agendas. And they're all determined to bring humanity down to a sustainable, manageable size.
Right.
That's the purpose of their agenda. All right. So, with their agenda is the reality that the entire world is to come to a place of surrender to their agenda, and that has to happen by the year 2050. 2030 is a very important year. 2030 is when they begin to hard press for 2050. Agenda 2021, or Agenda 21, is an agenda that's been stated way back in the 1980s. 1990s, George Bush Sr. held the whole agenda before him in Rio de Janeiro and said, it's time for this new world order to come into existence.
I had a teacher when I was in high school in the 1970s that was spouting most of the things that are in Agenda 21. So there was a lot of talk going on leading up to it.
Academia was all interconnected in regards to the UN's agenda. That's how they've succeeded to promote their agenda so successfully, because they rooted it in academia. Why academia? Because we have great respect for academia.
Right.
We really shouldn't.
Right.
But we do. So now this agenda that's being pushed puts on the veneer of concern for the ecology.
Mm-hmm.
So I am almost certain that a nuclear war is being forged, being prepared. And on the heels of the nuclear war will be the idea of, this is World War III. At the end of this nuclear exchange, which will be what they would call World War III, will be the incredible need to shut the world down and ecologically change things.
Right.
Because, who knows? We've exchanged 1,000 nuclear weapons, and the ecology is in jeopardy. So the statement following this exchange would be, unfortunately, we were left with no choice but to do what we've done. Now, Russia is a shell of what it was before. We've taken some big hits. Now we have to concern ourselves for our ecology. And that becomes their impetus for their big agenda. I'm almost convinced that that's where they're going with this. Now, I hope not. That would be horrible. But if that's the case, you can understand where a third of humanity will die. How that will happen.
Right, right.
This horrible exchange will certainly bring about the conditions for that to happen. So, I was teaching on the rapture last night, and of course, whenever you talk about these things, people get kind of itchy for the rapture. Because we all want to escape what's coming, right? Unfortunately, the Bible tells us that we will not. Those in Messiah will be here. We are the elect. And because we're here, these days will be shortened. So that's not something that most Christians want to hear. But it's absolutely the case, whether we want to hear it or not. So yeah, it's likely that this incredible event will unfold, where the global community, the leaders of the global community, will decide upon affirming a nuclear war. And they will use that very exchange again to establish their purpose. This is how demonic these people are. Is there any mystery? Is there any question that the global entities of this world, the New World Order, the beast government, are horribly evil? No, they are. They're driven by the devil himself, by the dragon, right?
Right.
So now, let's talk about World War III. As dreadful as that sounds, let's talk about World War III. We suffered World War I and II. I said we, humanity.
Right.
And they were pretty horrible. They were pretty horrible. World War I was, in a sense, more tolling upon humanity than World War II. We had the nuclear bombs that we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was pretty terrible. And lives were lost. But World War I claimed more lives. All of the effects that followed, all of the chemical weapons, the biological weapons that were used in World War I. It was sort of like an experimental table. World War I was like that, where we experimented with a lot of things. We had the Spanish flu that came right on the heels of World War I. That decimated many millions of people. And so World War I was this introduction to global war. And I believe that war was contrived, was put together, was decided upon, and purposely brought into existence in order to carry out their ultimate agenda. When I say they, I mean the globalists. Mm-hmm. I say that for many reasons. Because right at the beginning of the 1900s is where we begin to recognize a push towards establishing global hegemony under one board of directors. And these were the globalists. You can look at the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Council on Foreign Relations was just one aspect of the globalists. What was the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR? Anglo-American union and an initiative to bring about globalization. But the Council on Foreign Relations was just one of many organizations that were working to bring this into existence. So whenever you get into this type of discussion, invariably the Illuminati will come up. The Illuminati does not exist. No. Did they exist at one time? Yes. They certainly did exist.
There's a bunch of Illuminati wannabes today.
Yeah. I think about all of these rap stars and these hip hop artists and actors want to be, the people that just want to make all sorts of money and do nothing for it. They claim association with the Illuminati, and they don't really know what they're doing.
Right.
On some level, they might have connection to a demonic realm that is in fact an offspring of the actual Illuminati. But the Illuminati, of course, came into existence in Bavaria, Germany, Bavaria, in the late 1700s, 1774 or something, 1776 maybe. I'm not sure. I don't have it right here now. But they came into existence then, and they lasted 10 years before the Bavarian government shut them down completely.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Weishaupt was the founder of the Illuminati. Now, I say the founder, it wasn't his idea. It was a Jesuit idea. He was a Jesuit, even though some claim that he wasn't an actual Jesuit, but he was. It was a Jesuit initiative, and he was responsible for bringing it into existence. The Illuminati was disbanded, but what happened was, we've read some of his quotes before on this program, where he talked about how their mission is to infiltrate every organization, every secret society in Europe and around the world. So in 1776, when they came into existence, the entire world was in upheaval at that time. What was happening? The French Revolution,
Right.
the American Revolution.
Right.
Now, these two revolutions became the catalyst by which the Illuminati began to expand itself out. You also had the Russian Revolution.
Right.
All of those were happening right at the same time.
Yeah.
So those three revolutionary revolutionary actions became the catalyst for the Illuminati to spread out and to begin to dominate. And that's what they began to do in just 10 short years. So following the dismantlement of the official Illuminati, they fragmented into 100 different sub-organizations. And some of those sub-organizations are in existence today. What did they need? They needed vehicles to transport their ideology, to transport their agenda. And they found many vehicles. One of the vehicles that they used was the Scottish Rite Lodge and the Freemasons. The Freemasons and the Scottish Rite and many of the other secret societies of Europe became vehicles that the Illuminati, the disbanded Illuminati, used to achieve their goals. Now, that brings us to Albert Pike. Okay, so who's Albert Pike? I think he was originally from Arkansas. He was a general in the Civil War. Not particularly accomplished, but he was a general. After the war came to an end, he founded the KKK, Ku Klux Klan. Of course, you can just understand how evil he was, right?
Right.
The founder of the KKK, yes. Which is interesting because we talked about this earlier, that there's a statue of Albert Pike prominently placed in Washington, D.C.,
Yep.
where he's staring at the obelisk, right? He's
Washington
standing right there,
Monument,
staring at I call it the obelisk.
Yeah.
He's staring at the phallic symbol that's the obelisk, and he's sort of in a posture as if he's admiring
Yeah.
the obelisk. Now, behind him is a statue of Martin Luther King Jr.,
Yeah.
staring right at his rear end.
Right.
Now, a few years ago, with the Black Lives Matter upheaval,
Right.
statues were being taken down, right, everywhere.
No one ever looked at that one.
Why did they not go
no
after
one
Albert
glanced
Pike?
at it for a second.
It seems to me that Albert Pike will be number one to come down.
Yes.
But it wasn't. He got a pass. I think that speaks to the reality that the people that were behind the taking down of the statues were not the ones who took them down.
Okay.
You understand what I'm driving at?
Yeah.
That the very power elements behind our government were behind the Black Lives Matter movement
Right.
and the taking down of statues. And that's why Albert Pike's statue was to remain, because Albert Pike is a very important figure in their movement.
Right.
So what did Albert Pike do besides establish the KKK? Well, he did exactly what Adam Weishaupt said the Illuminati must do. They must infiltrate organizations of power and influence. Right. So what did he do? He infiltrated the American branch of the Scottish Rite and the Freemasons.
Okay.
And he brought with him sort of a order within the order of the Freemasons, where you would have an order of ascendancy, and you would come to a place of degrees. It is effectively Albert Pike and other Illuminists from around the world, other globalists, Illuminists from around the world, that turned the Freemasons into what it has become. A sketchy, demonic, satanic organization with all sorts of demonic rituals involved in its ascendancy, and the whole idea that after the 23rd degree you become a Luciferian. All these facts, concerning the Scottish Rite of today and the Freemasons of today was introduced because of people like Albert Pike. Albert Pike wrote a book. What was the book? Dogma and Doctrine. Right? Dogma
Morals and Dogma
Morals and Dogma. Right. Of the...
I'm pulling it up. Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite.
Right. And together with that, of course, the Freemasons.
Right.
So I've never read the book. I've never even picked it up.
So interestingly, I did.
You
and
did.
It was hard to get it because you have to be a Mason to get a copy of the book.
Yeah.
So there was one at the public library. We went to Orlando Public Library and ordered it from the University of Florida Public Library, where someone had died, and the books were donated to the library.
Really?
And they had a copy of it. And so I had it for 2 weeks, and I was looking specifically for the places where it says that the light bearer is actually bearing the light of Lucifer. And it's stated 3 times in the book. It's bigger than the Bible. It's a huge book.
Yeah. I've seen the book. I've never picked it up, and I probably would not. I know that book became sort of the Bible of the Scottish Rite and the Freemasons.
Yes.
And it's horribly demonic, right? You stated it yourself.
They promoted their membership to study it.
Yeah.
So
So I remember early on in my faith and my determination to serve Messiah, I encountered a Freemason, and I had some of this information, and I attempted to save him.
Right. Yep.
To redeem him, bring him away from that bondage. Didn't succeed at all, but I made him very angry. Very angry.
Sure.
When I brought up Albert Pike and that particular book and its devotion to Lucifer, right? So it is real. We know it's real. You testify to it.
Sure.
Now, Albert Pike was, of course, the consummate demonic, evil globalist with plans to bring about a global government. That goes back to, again, the Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt, and all that he did to attain to this move towards a global order. So there are many conspiracies in the world, and some of us, we're at a place where we don't want to hear about conspiracies. Well, I feel badly for you because conspiracies are real.
Yeah.
And the fact that the world is where it is today is a testament to the realness of conspiracies.
Right.
Well, much of the conspiracies that involves, globalization and global governments, global governance, came from the Illuminati. And the men like Albert Pike and others who forced this upon humanity. So Albert Pike wrote the infamous letter to the other Illuminist, Mazzini, an Italian, Mazzini.
Yeah.
And he wrote this letter that wasn't intended to be a formal letter. It wasn't supposed to get out into the public, but somehow it was exposed. Some good soul said, this letter has to be exposed. The letter was intended to be private between him and this fellow Illuminist by the name of Mazzini. But the letter came out. And that letter today it's in London at Oxford, the Oxford
University.
Library. But in the library, I think it is, or in the museum, one of those places.
Okay.
Oxford Museum. The letter is framed there, and it's protected, it's guarded. So he wrote in this letter to Mazzini that we, meaning the Illuminists, the disciples of Adam Weishaupt, actually the disciples of Satan, needed to put together an effort to bring about 3 global wars. 3 world wars, he said in this letter. Mm-hmm. And with incredible accuracy, in the year 1885, I think he wrote this letter, if I'm not mistaken, he described what World War I would be like and what World War II would be like, mentioning some of the factors that would be involved. He actually mentioned that Germany will have a Führer, a leader, that will lead the world into that Second World War. Right. Now, we didn't bring the entire letter to bear here, but I did copy his statements about a prospective Third World War, and I want you to read that for us.
Sure.
So, he spoke about 3 world wars, and these 3 world wars were to ultimately bring the world into a place of submission. Submission to whom? Well, submission to the globalists. Mm-hmm. And he is horribly serious. Right? This is not a joke. This is not some conspiracy thing. He wrote this letter to this fellow illuminist, Manzini, with serious intentions. And they worked towards that. The very fact that following that letter and the impetus of that letter, we had a world war some 30 years later. We had the First World War.
Right.
Where globalists were responsible for it. Not only did they bring about the conditions for global conflict, they were also at the same time working towards global religion, right? The ecumenical movement. The ecumenical movement came into existence in the early 1900s, right when they were forging this global conflict. So it's all about bringing about this condition of globalization. That's what this is all about. And so let's read what Albert Pike said concerning a Third World War.
The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, in parentheses, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal but without knowing where to render adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time.
So that's a whole lot of information.
He said a lot.
And when I first read that letter many, many years ago, I didn't want to believe it was real.
Right.
Because the implications are astonishing.
Yes.
The implications are that he represented a global impetus, an evil catalyst to bring about 3 world wars, and they are succeeding.
Yeah.
So based on what he said, can't we see that they're also succeeding upon World War III right now? Can't we see that? I mean, he talked about all of the spiritual, the emotional, all of the unrest. Isn't that what we're seeing in the world right now?
Yeah. Horrific.
It's exactly what he envisioned. How is it that this man can be this powerful, this insightful? Two reasons. One, he was demonically influenced.
Yes.
Worships Lucifer.
Right.
He was demonically influenced, and he had power. Not power that came from God, but he had power. And so he saw a plan and committed himself to the carrying out of this plan that was inspired by the devil himself. But remember, the dragon, the devil that formed the beast and the false prophet, right? The unholy trinity is actually being maneuvered by God.
Yeah.
So evil men like Pike, who have committed themselves against God, against everything that's holy and divine, God will lever them. He will lever them. And so this Albert Pike, horribly evil, demonic person, has been levered by God. And God will bring about his conclusion in spite of their intentions to bring about this final condition. So will World War III succeed? Not the way that they envision it succeeding. Why? Because there's going to be an intervention. God did not intervene in World War I, as far as we can see, all right? But they had this incredible plan with World War I, because right following World War I is when these same monsters came up with the League of Nations, right? I mean, 1919 is when they unfolded or unveiled their intention for global government.
Right.
So on the heels of World War I, 1919, they come up with this idea of global governance under one body of men, the CFR, League of Nations. And one of the things that they touted is that we would be able to prevent anything like a world war ever happening again. What happened within 15 years?
My mother said World War I was the war to end all wars.
Right. And that's what they were saying. That's what they were saying. So once the League of Nations came into existence, there was an immediate sense of euphoria. We're going to have a global government that will take care of all of our conflicts. And on the heels of that euphoria, we have the Roaring '20s. But then what happened?
Stock market crash.
And then what happened?
Depression.
The conditions under which we had a Second World War began to foment, mostly in Germany, Austria.
Right.
So you want to tell me that this globalist organization couldn't have seen that coming? Couldn't have stopped it from happening? The truth is they were behind it.
Right.
They were 100% behind it. They forged it. They brought it into existence. Following this, of course, they said, well, that was terrible. We didn't expect it. World War II was terrible. But what we need now is a more potent global organization.
Right.
We need to take the League of Nations and beef it up about 100%, and here you have it, the United Nations. At the formation of the United Nations, they said that the United Nations that had manifested following World War II was but a prototype of what is to come. And that great government, that great global government that will come is in the future. So think about it. World War I, League of Nations. World War II, United Nations. And we know that they're planning a third World War. So what are they hoping for at the end of World War III?
Obviously, we would call it the beast government.
It is the beast government.
It is. It's just stronger, has teeth.
Right. So God did not intervene in World War I that we can see clearly. God intervened in World War II. He stopped Hitler and preserved his people and brought them home. 1948.
Right.
Following the war, 1948. God is going to intervene in this global conflict. That's Armageddon.
That's our trust, our hope.
That's Armageddon. With me, it's beyond hope. It's a matter of faith and conviction.
Right.
God is going to intervene because Jesus said it. Unless these days are shortened, no one will survive.
Right.
These are the days that Jesus was referring to. These are the days that the book of Revelation points to. So God's going to shorten these days through intervention. That's what we see in Matthew chapter 24. Jesus said there will be great tribulation, unlike anything before ever to come. And then he says, beware of false Christs,
Right.
false religious movements, the beast. They'll deceive even the elect if possible.
Right.
But because of the elect, these days will be shortened. Then he goes right on to declaring his coming. The Son of Man will come with power and great glory and gather his elect from the four corners of the earth. So that's intervention. We read Revelation chapter 19. That's intervention. And that's coming as the church is raptured. So the rapturing of the church, or the resurrection of the church, points to the end of this World War III. The thing that will bring an end, let me say it this way. The thing that will bring an end to their hopes of a third world war and a final form of global governance is the resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
It will stop them dead in their tracks.
Right.
Because when the church resurrects, we're coming with Yeshua on white horses to rule. We read it, Revelation chapter 19. To rule the nations with a rod of iron. What is the first thing Jesus does when he comes? Revelation chapter 19. He will seize the beast and the false prophet, the kings of the earth who stood to make war with him, and he'll cast them into the lake of fire.
Right.
Everyone who's taken the mark of the beast. Awesome times. But God will intervene with his son Yeshua to stop this dead in its tracks. If he doesn't, according to Jesus, if these days are not shortened, no one will survive. Because this world government, this satanic, Luciferian movement has an idea for humanity, which is we need to be brought down to a sustainable growth.
Right.
Right. So, have you seen well, I don't know if you've seen the Marvel movies.
I haven't.
You haven't, right? So there's this character. His name is Thanos. He is this titan. He's malevolent. He is benevolent. He's good, but he's evil. Why is he good? Because he has a plan to bring the universe down to its right size, a sustainable growth size. And he has a plan to do this. And he's a titan. He's a warrior. And he succeeds to do it. Brings the world down to its right size. But he's evil because he's bringing destruction. I think these animals, the globalists, they honestly believe that they are
doing good,
benevolent.
Yeah.
And that what they're doing is for the betterment of creation. Whose creation? Well, Lucifer's creation.
Right.
Because Lucifer believes that he's at the helm of the ship. The truth is, God's at the helm of the ship.
Deep down inside, he knows he's not.
Yes. His trick is to deceive enough people.
Right.
You see, I see the devil as an incredibly complex, fallen creature. And this is what I mean. He believes that if he can deceive enough people and have enough people believe in his lie, then his lie can possibly become a reality. I think he believes that.
Yeah.
But like you said, deep down in his heart, he knows that he's defeated.
Right.
But if he can just convince the entire world, he himself would feel convinced. And maybe that's his grappling for faith. He's void of faith. Void of it completely. He was a creature created for faith, to house great faith. He was a covering cherub.
Right.
That was completely taken away from him. So his counterfeit faith is to have people believe that he will ascend to the throne of God. He will be like God. And if enough people believe that, perhaps it becomes a reality for him. But he's miserably wrong, of course. God's going to bring him into judgment. We know this. And so the world is being driven by him. He's a dragon.
When Pike says Lucifer will finally be brought out in public view, I heard that and I thought, that's his 10 minutes of fame.
Mm-hmm. Well, his intentions is that in this new world, following World War III, he will be lifted up and exalted. What did Satan say in Isaiah chapter 12? What did Lucifer say? I will be like God. Right. I will ascend above the stars of God. So this is his plan from the beginning. So Albert Pike is just reflecting what Isaiah saw in Isaiah chapter 12.
Right.
But again, I am convinced that his plan will unravel.
Oh, sure.
God will intervene. The resurrection of the church and the coming of Christ is the end of his reign.
Right.
So, yes, Armageddon is that incredible conflict that the Bible points to. We're seeing all of the hallmarks for it. We're seeing that, yes, we're likely facing Armageddon. And many Christians are wringing their hands because we're supposed to be out of here by now.
We need to be taking on the attitude of, good, this is about to end and the kingdom of God is about to be established.
And not only that, we have a purpose here. We are the elect. Jesus said it.
Yes.
Because of the elect, these days will be shortened. We got to function here.
Right.
We've got something to do. We have to be the elect. And we have to discover what it is to be the elect.
Yeah.
We're not the elect because we're chosen. We're the elect because we act upon it. Right? The Calvinist says, you're elect, you're chosen. That settles it. Get over it. I say no. We are elect, but we have to walk in that office. We have to hear and obey and walk it out and be the elect because of our faith and application of faith.
Right.
So,
right.
Anyway, good question.
Yeah, excellent.
Incredible time that we live in. Yes, Armageddon is forming around us. And I want to speak quickly, just poignantly, to our Christian friends, those that are paying attention. I know we've been told that we'll be raptured out of here before all of this would ever come to be. I understand where that came from. I understand the complexity of it. I understand where it was conceived and where it was promoted. But I want to say to you, I want you to consider that the Bible teaches that there will be no such thing as a pre-tribulation rapture. The Bible teaches that Jesus will come at the end of a period of tribulation. And his coming will be salvation for the entire world. He will bring salvation as he comes and put an end to tyranny. This is something we should look forward to. The idea that we should just wait to be pulled out of here and be taken to heaven, it's not biblical, because we're actually going to reign in the earth. He's coming to establish a kingdom, and we're going to reign with him in this kingdom. The Bible is clear. We will be on the earth during this millennial kingdom. So rather than look forward to being pulled out of here, scooped away and escaping any hardship, is very selfish when you really think about it. No, as believers, we ought to be willing to give ourselves and lay down our lives for the sake of the kingdom of God. This is what Jesus did. He laid his life down for the kingdom of God, and he wanted his disciples to do the same. So here we are. We have this opportunity to not be afraid of what's coming, to believe that we are God's vessel in the midst of all of the hardship that is coming, and that God will use us. Should we believe that we can be used by God, a vessel in God's hands during these times? I venture to say that he will use us that way. He will apply us to the very solution that he's bringing, and we'll be a part of it. What do you want to do? You want to escape, or you want to be a part of the solution? That's the question. Armageddon is all about the nation's hostility against Israel, but it's not really the nations. It is the demonic realm, Satan and his realm. They are against Israel. We ought to understand that we have a part in this conflict and stand and not be afraid.
That's our program. If this question has raised other questions in your mind, you are at liberty to share them with us. You can do so by easiest way is to just email us at voice@buildupzion.org. Again, that's voice@buildupzion.org. Until next week, Shalom.